Good day and welcome back to another episode of The Next Big Thing. I am your host Shriram Iyer, and it is my absolute privilege to welcome today's guest. She is currently Executive Vice President Asia Pacific at All3 Media International, and she brings tremendous experience, many multiple roles in the field. She loves public speaking. She is a debating champion, and she understands media, markets, and leadership to the nth degree. So today, I cannot wait to understand what makes people tick under adversity. How do we be resilient when we face extreme adversity? So cannot wait to welcome the wonderful, please welcome Sabrina Duguet. Sabrina, welcome to the show.
Hi, Shriram. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's
Lovely to be here.
Yes, and thank you. You're joining us all the way from Singapore.
I am. Yes.
Yes, nice bright day in Singapore, I can see.
It's always hot, you know.
It's always hot. It's always hot.
Always hot and humid. So yes.
I think they say that in
bright and sunny.
Singapore, there's two climates: hot and hotter, something like that.
It's exactly that. Winter it's still incredibly hot.
That's fantastic. So in Melbourne's very moody. Melbourne has many seasons, as you know from your past visits.
The 4 seasons in one day, isn't it? Isn't that what people say? 4 seasons in one day.
Sometimes it feels like 4 seasons in 1 hour. So it's, but it's okay. You get used to it. Melbourne's a wonderful place, and I love Melbourne. So excellent. Welcome to the show. Thank you for making time. And there's so much to learn from your experiences, and I can't wait to get into it. But as you know, there's a tradition on The Next Big Thing. Every time a guest comes on to kick things off, they share 2 things about themselves. So one is fact and one is fiction. Now, I don't know which one's which, and you can try to confound me. So the ball is in your court. Are you happy to take it away?
Okay, I am happy to take it away. All right, so I'm giving you 2 facts and you have to guess,
2
right?
statements.
So,
yes.
Okay. All right, statements. So one statement would be, I started powerlifting 20 years ago. And the second statement is, I spent weeks in a Tibetan monastery.
Okay, all right. So let me replay both of them. You did powerlifting how many years ago? 10 years ago.
20 years ago.
20 years ago. And then you spent a number of weeks in a Tibetan monastery.
Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Very interesting. Both of them are slightly different, and you look very calm and very poised, and nothing outside can disturb me. You've got that vibe going on. So I wonder if you spent some time at a Tibetan monastery. But then you're also, you're a powerhouse. You've lifted companies and people. And I don't know if you've actually done it. So I'm going to let's go with fact, is that you've done powerlifting 20 years ago. That's my fact.
All right, so I have done powerlifting, but not 20 years ago. I've just started 3-4 years ago. So it was a bit of a tricky one, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a curveball. So there is, okay.
It was.
Devil lies in the detail.
Yeah, exactly. So I did spend a few weeks in a Tibetan monastery.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. So tell me about, I want to know about both. So when did the Tibetan monastery happen, and what did that teach you, and how do you take that into work?
Sure. So that was around maybe 16 years ago.
Right.
And I did pick those 2 examples because indeed, as you said, they're quite different. But I think it also represents me. My hobbies and my activities are quite eclectic.
Wow,
so, and I love it. And I'd like to think it's probably something that has helped me to have so diverse tastes, I would say. So on the Tibetan monastery, I'm going to give you a very quick summary. I've always been passionate about religion. From maybe more a sociological point of view, I'm fascinated by, the impact of religion in people's life and how it's moved so much of the big events. And I've read, the Quran and Bible, and went to a bookshop one day, and I saw a book about Buddhism. didn't know anything about Buddhism. And I thought, okay, let's give it a go. And I felt a deep connection. I was in London back then. I was in the tube and reading the book, and I felt, I'm feeling so connected to this. And I felt, oh, there are other people thinking like I do. It's answered questions that I had and putting into words thought that I have.
Yeah.
So I got into it, and the week later, I bought a biography about a nun who grew up in Tibet in a monastery. And it was a large book, but there was one sentence where she said that in the monastery where she grew up, they used to welcome Westerners.
They used to welcome us. Okay, right. Okay.
Yes. I was in my early 20s. I was supposed to go on a holiday with my friend Ida Beza. And I swapped that to go to Nepal to spend a few weeks in a Tibetan monastery instead.
Wow.
There we go. That's the introduction.
How did your friend feel about that?
They laughed because they're like, since when are you into Buddhism? And I said 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
But it just it just felt right. And I tried to follow what feels right. And it was right. And it was definitely one of the top 5 experiences in my life, without any doubt.
Wow. One of the top 5 experiences. We've got to spend more time talking about that. So one key lesson is you got to do what you feel is right, I think. And that is a quality that you had from your early 20s. That's really admirable. That is really admirable. So
and just take a chance sometimes.
So I'm driven a lot by instinct. A lot of my creative pursuits, while I might not have the requisite training in some of those fields, I do reasonably well because of instinct. Yeah. And it feels right. So tell me a bit more about some lessons, top 5 experiences, so has to be some lessons that have stayed with you that you take into your workforce as well.
Yes, for sure. I did following that. I did actually also twice Vipassana. I don't know if you're familiar with
Vipassana. Yes. Very familiar with that.
And people who know me, I don't seem actually like the obvious person to go and spend 12 days in a silent retreat.
In silence,
quite chatty.
Yes.
But I really think it has had a fantastic impact in my life. I tend to say it hasn't changed me, but it has changed my relation to things and to events. And it has given me that little gap, that you need sometime between what's happening in your emotion and how you're reacting to things.
Absolutely.
So it's not like if I never feel any negative emotions anymore. It's more that if something happens, I have time to think, do I really want to engage in that emotion? Do I really want to feel, angry about this? And it's just that, so that duration, that response has shortened a lot.
Because you're able to step away from it and just observe it a bit? Yeah, okay.
Yes, and I have a bit more of that objective view of that. Is it really worth it to get angry about this, to get upset about this?
Yes.
And if I do feel those emotions, they tend to be far lower in terms of intensity and far shorter.
Yeah, fantastic. That is so cool to hear, because I love that. I love all of that very, very much. Unlike you, in my 20s, while I had a lot of faith, I was grounded by faith, but I did not dig deep into myself. The journey was very much extroverted as opposed to being introverted and learning about myself, which I only learned to do in my mid-30s, and which was wonderful. And for me, religion, spirituality continues to be a cornerstone of everything that I do. And I attended a wonderful self-development camp run by one of the spiritual/cultural communities that we're a part of in Melbourne. And I was able to articulate my purpose with great clarity for the very first time. So it's all up here in my room. And it's to spread joy and inspiration to all like-minded people. So joy and inspiration, those are my 2 things. I like to entertain, but I also like to enlighten. So that's, I'll make you laugh one second, and then very next second in my talks, I make you think very deeply. So that's what.
Sounds like a very good combo.
Yes, well, I hope so. I thoroughly enjoy it, and spirituality and religion has played a lot of role in it. I enjoy digging deep into myself. So great to hear that. And now powerlifting. Okay, maybe not 20 years ago. That was a slight. that was where you threw me off. But you currently do powerlifting. So tell me how you got into that. And what are some lessons you've learned from powerlifting?
So it was again a little bit of a coincidence. I love sports, and I was just doing a bit of CrossFit, and I took a coach in Singapore I really wanted to train. And one day, completely randomly, he said, "Oh, I'm doing a powerlifting workshop this weekend. Do you want to go?"
Right.
To be honest, I didn't know what powerlifting was, and I thought, why not? Again, being quite open to things.
I love it.
Why not? So I ended up in that workshop, really not knowing what I was going to be doing. And at the end of the workshop, he said, "You know what? For someone who's never trained, you're quite good. Right. Do you want to do a competition in 10, 12 weeks?"
Whoa!
And I thought, this is ridiculous, right? I mean, I'm not very young, like the other people in the class were much younger. I'm like, this is a bit ridiculous, and I'm going to look stupid, right? And then I thought, okay, let's pause a moment. What would be the reason for not doing it? Would be a bit of ego, because not wanting to look bad, not wanting to fail, not wanting to look stupid, with this ugly onesie that you wear. And I'm like, this is not a good reason to say no. Because actually, the win will be in turning up.
Yeah.
And putting myself in that very uncomfortable position. And so I did, Shriram, I trained for the next 12 weeks, 10, 12 weeks. It was quite a short timing. And I competed in my first powerlifting competition. That was, I don't know, just before COVID, basically, in Singapore.
And since then, you've been regularly powerlifting and...
Yes, on and off for various reasons. But yes, I did another competition last December. And he has taught me a lot.
Yeah.
And, in terms of, there is something really powerful in going to train in something that is very measurable. Right. We talk about growth. And I think, probably the reason why you're doing what you're doing is because you have a growth mindset. And but growing, and it's something that is slightly sometimes a bit intangible on a daily basis, right? But with powerlifting, with weights, it's something that is very tangible. Yeah. You go and train and you do one more set than the day before or the week before. You do one more kilo. Yeah. And therefore, it really gives you a bit of a kick. You're like, it's showing that you're progressing. Yeah. Also, you can't cheat, right? Yeah. There is no shortcut. Yeah. If you have 100 kilo on your back, you can't fake it, right? You can't suddenly like, I'm going to add 30 kilo because this is going to be incredibly dangerous. So you need to learn patience. Yeah. Yes, exactly, right? So you need to have patience. You need to follow the process of like believing that by turning up, showing up every morning or every 3 times a week, that it is going to have that compound interest that's going to help you at the end, right? And it's just feels good to start your day on a win, because regardless of what happened next, you're like, I have grown today. I've showed up. I've done a little bit more than I did before. So I would say these are all learnings that have had a very positive impact on the rest of my life. And also, I remember what I thought before I started. I'm like, it seems undoable, but I managed to do it. Yeah. And then suddenly you're like, well, what else do I think I can't do that actually I can do?
Love it.
Right? Yeah. And maybe to give you one last example, which I think has been incredibly helpful for me, is you realize your mind stops you far before what your capabilities are. Wow. And in powerlifting, the time I've always done the best numbers is when I did not know the weight on the bar. It's when my
ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, well, it's because if my coach, put the weight on the bar, my brain did not have the moment to say, this is going to be difficult. I won't be able to do it. I trusted that if he put it, it's because I can. Yeah. And therefore, I tackled the challenge very differently, because I tackled it with what he's put it on. I can do it. Versus, oh my God, this is going to be really difficult. I won't be able to. Yes. And it's a bit what is the quote from Mark Twain. Oh, they didn't know it was impossible, so they did it.
So they did it.
Right?
Yes, I love it.
And I think that's incredibly powerful, because if you can transfer that to other areas of life, in business, in maybe another hobby that you thought, this is just too difficult, maybe ask again.
Absolutely. Ask again. Ask again. I absolutely love this, because this has been a theme of my life. Actually, for many years, I was in a very different space, and it took me incredible amount of work, and of course, having the right mentors and gurus to help me U-turn and turn things around. And this is a big part. And every day when I speak about this, honestly, on a daily basis, to my either group coaching calls or individual clients or organizations, I talk a lot about, in fact, so I read you the purpose, right? So this one actually here says, yes, I can make anything happen. Don't assume where the limit is. Ask, how far can I go? And be amazed by the possibilities. And this was a big shift for me. So, just listening to you talk is inspiring. I mean, there was patience in there. There was self-talk, and there was belief. So a lot of what I talk about and love to discuss with people is about belief, because belief precedes behavior. And if you want to change behavior, you've got to change belief. And so here you are using the belief of, I believe in showing up. I believe in challenging status quo. I believe in getting out of my comfort zone. And then there's certain behaviors and certain outcomes. So it's fascinating. I love it. And I do want to share that while I coach people on peak performance, there was one, and now a friend of mine, who approached me saying, will you coach me in writing a book? I know you're a published novelist, you're a bestseller. How do you write a book? And I said, look, I don't know much about nonfiction, but I can coach you. So I took her on. She was one of my few people who I coached on writing a book, and the whole book was on powerlifting. And it's about her journey.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's about her journey as a powerlifter.
Okay.
So because I was working on the book, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is interesting. I never did it, but I'm like, this is so cool. So a lot of respect for you. And I want to.
I think there's.
Sorry, you go.
No, sure, go ahead.
No, you were saying something.
No, I think there was another. About I really like your quote, because indeed it is pushing you to reconsider what we think is possible or not. There is an example that people give a lot in coaching or public speaking, is the example of Usain Bolt and his record breaking on the 100 meters, right? Because until he went under the 10 second, most people thought that was not possible.
Yes.
The moment he broke that record, which was at, I think, 9.69 seconds, several months later did it. It's not because suddenly people were physically more capable. It was just a mindset, because they knew it was possible. And I really try to remember those examples when sometimes you're faced with something that you're like, oh, no, I can't do that. You're like, And I just found that inspiring to remember 100%. In my own life, but also in many examples out there. It is a question of mindset. You're 100% right. I think there's also being very open to failure that I think is really important. And being in that uncomfortable situation. I think there is also something in Buddhism that we kind of call thought transformation, is that you always have different ways to see a situation. And I remember when I was in that Tibetan monastery, the one example that was given was, well, you need to go to the post office and there is a huge queue. You have two options. Or you going to queue and feel incredibly angry about it because you're like, I'm wasting my time. I am a busy person. This is a waste of time. Or you're like, this might be a good opportunity to practice my patience. And this is life, right? This is always, what angle are you taking?
What angle are you taking?
What about the powerlifting was like, okay, am I going to focus on looking stupid in my onesie and not performing really well in my first powerlifting? Right. Or am I going to focus on, this is a challenge that's going to help me grow? And the challenge becomes the reason why I do it.
The challenge.
There is a quote that I love. Yes. And there is a quote that I love. It's actually on my Facebook. It says, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. So now when I think of challenges, I try to see it in a positive way. It's challenging. Okay, then it's good for me.
Yeah. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. I love it. I absolutely love it. So a lot of my talks, my program's called How to Perform Like a Supercar. My wife loves supercars, and she's a big Lamborghini fan. And so I thought, how do I package peak performance, right? A lot of people talk about peak performance. Let me dress it up in a different way. Yeah. But I have this fascination for Mount Everest. And even in my second novel, Mount Everest is almost like a character. And I cannot get over the story, the untold story of how the conquest of Mount Everest actually happened. And anyway, I won't get into great details with it. Maybe offline we'll talk about it. But for me, that is a story of how the impossible becomes the possible. You know, on the 28th of May, 1953, it was impossible. The next day it became possible. And so it's just having that patience and saying, it might look a bit hard, but if I have the right attitude, the right mindset, and the right process, actually it comes into the possible zone. So I just love these stories. Okay, so now so powerlifting is obviously it works on the body, right? It's a body thing, and it's a mind thing as well. How do you see the body mind connection, and what can we best learn in terms of peak performing, I'd say, in your careers? How does the body mind connection work according to you?
I think it's always easier to use the example of the body growth or challenges or sport, because it's something very concrete that people can see. But I don't see a lot of difference between the way that you're going to train your body. It is exactly the same as the way that you should train your mind. And people know that you can change physically your body. However, I think people find it much harder to see that about changing the mind. And is it easy? No. I mean, this is not easy to go on to train for powerlifting.
No.
And it's not easy either to train your mind. And it's not because you're going to read one book that is going to change your life, right? It's not because you're going to do one course. And don't get me wrong, I've believed that so many times. I'm like, the next course I'm doing, because I do a lot of course all the time. I'm like, the next course, I'm going to come back. Everything will be different. The next book, the next podcast, like there is... I'm not being negative, I think, but it's just realistic. There is no shortcut. The same way there is no shortcut to lifting 120 kilo, there is no shortcut to building the right mindset. It is the small increment. It is, what are you going to surround yourself with? What are you going to listen to on a daily basis? Who are you going to surround yourself? Who and what are you surrounding yourself with that are going to be those little increments? But that's why it's harder, right? Because to stay motivated, you're like, but this is not changing, and I'm still the same way that I was, and which is why I mentioned earlier the compound interest. But I like that because it is important to remember that. That, what is that quote from I think it's Bill Gates, isn't it, that said we overestimate what we can do in 1 year, but underestimate what we can do in 10. And it's a little bit that, right? It's that because in 1 year, sometimes it's hard to see our progress. So, which is why I think remembering that, I think it's just important, to a conversation previously on those examples that motivate us. For you, it's Mount Everest. For me, it might be, Bolt, or it might be, my powerlifting thing. I think it's important because if you treat your mind like you treat your body and how you're going to keep fit, and knowing that muscles are going to go down as much as we age, it's quite similar to our brain. It just needs to be that constant stimulation, and there is no shortcut. And I know people love saying there's, do my course and there's going to be it might be life changing. I'm not saying that courses have not had a big impact, but I think it's a little bit too easy to say it will change everything.
I agree.
And
I agree.
Same for meditation, right? I mean, if I think of Vipassana, yes. Did it have a big impact? Yes. And the reason why Vipassana require a minimum of 12 days is that the impact is big enough in the moment that it encourages you to keep going. The same way when you do a long health retreat, right? Because you see the benefits straight away. So you're like, okay, it encourages me because I saw the growth.
Yes. Because we all want lasting transformation, right? We want something that not a fly-by-night thing. 100%. But I also feel that it's this mindset, and I was there, that the answers are external. The course, external course, the talk, the podcast, the mentor, and sure, they all have their place. I do not deny
Yes.
that. But I think end of the day, the big moment comes when you realize that the answers are not out there, they're actually in here. And I think that's a big moment.
Oh, yes.
I think for me, it really worked that, hang on, I actually have all the answers I need. Sometimes I just don't know where to look. And it's quite a moment when you realize,
it's true.
It's all with me. I am the answer. so interesting, very interesting.
Oh, no, you're 100% right. And I think you're right. And I think when you said that, it made me think of the importance of self-reflection, of pausing and really thinking. I think you're completely right. All the answers are there. But that's why spending time to reflect on what are my strengths that I can play with? What are maybe my weaknesses that maybe some of them I can improve if that's important to me?
Yeah.
But it comes with a deep understanding of where we are.
100%.
And then only then you know how to get to the destination.
100%.
Right? And I think there is a little bit of vulnerability that comes with it also.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big word, and
it is a big word, and I want to explore that further. But it's true, and you have talked about vulnerability, and you are a business leader, a game changer. You make things happen, and you're always seen in this. You're powerlifting. You're seen as this champion, right? As this. Oh, we look to Sabrina to guide us. So how does a leader then approach vulnerability? And how does a leader use that to maybe inspire people? How does that work?
I think it's such an interesting question, because I think, well, it's become a more popular word. There's a lot of negative ideas that can rise with the idea of vulnerability. When you think of a leader, you think of someone who's not vulnerable.
Yes.
Right? You don't, or people don't want to show. It's very tricky. People feel that by showing my vulnerability, I'm showing weakness.
Yes.
And
that equation is not correct.
Yeah. I don't think it's correct. I don't think it's correct at all. And I think you will probably inspire more by being vulnerable. I think I can be equally, incredibly confident in what I do in my business. Hopefully aiming to be a good leader, but also being vulnerable. And actually, that's something I encourage my team to do, and I try as much as possible to be vulnerable with them. Because when we look at someone, we look at you speaking on stage, people will think he's good at public speaking. He's, it's easy for him. I'm not a public speaker. I'm finding it hard I'm shy. And then people see the end result. And in a world now with social media where things are a lot prettier than they probably are in reality, where we show all the pretty things, I think it's even more important to be vulnerable and to show the journey, how you got there, that people might see me, I do, obviously, with my day-to-day work, I pitch a lot, I am in front of clients a lot, I speak in front of groups, and I think it's easy for my team to see, but Sabrina is good at that. And I made a point to tell them that it's not the case. We had a session with my company. They did women in media, something like that. And they asked a few managers, leaders to come and talk about their experience. And I made a point to tell them about where I started. I was not, and I'm still not, it's a work in progress, right? I'm still not probably where I want to be in terms of public speaking and all of that.
Aren't we all a work in progress?
Yes, of course. Yes, which is why we're doing this, right? Which is why you're doing what you're doing, right? But the first time I went to Cannes, so for the festival,
nice.
We meet, the point of us going is to meet clients and to pitch ideas. And the first time I went, I was in my early 20s. I got sick physically before going to my first pitch. Threw up. And it's really something, it's not common. And that's something actually that never happened since. But I thought, I must have got a bug. And, that's probably why on that morning I got sick. But it wasn't. I think looking back at it, it was just stress.
Wow.
And I didn't do it because I think people think, I'm in this job because it was easy. No, it wasn't. But I did it anyway. And I took, on the debating class, I'm definitely not a champion in debating. However, because I was finding it difficult to do public speaking. because I find it difficult to speak to client and pitch, I thought I need to improve. So I registered to do debating classes. Shriram, they were so tough. You count down the number of minutes before you're supposed to be your turn, and you're like, oh my God, in one time it's my turn to speak, and your palms are sweaty, and it was difficult. It's uncomfortable. You're worried of looking stupid. But looking back at that course, that had a massive impact on me. Was it easy? No. Was it uncomfortable? Hell yes. Was it challenging? Yes. But I learned so much on it. Also, because one of the things that was amazing in that course is that so every week we have to debate on different topic. We would not choose the topic. Well, we would not choose a topic, but we would not choose a side that we were on. So one week I had to argue pro death penalty, and my conviction is that I'm not pro death penalty. It was incredibly difficult.
That was tough.
But then you learn so much through that. You learn that in order to have a good argument, you need to understand everybody's view on a topic. It teaches you that, okay, this is my view. But in order to really understand the topic, you need to understand all aspects of it. And also that dangerous way you can argue anything, which is also a little bit dangerous, but you learn so much through it. So all of that to say that it's a work in progress and it's difficult, but you need to put yourself in a position that 100%. It is challenging, and therefore you grow from it. 100%. Just this week, I did a public speaking 2 days ago, and it was not easy. It's not like people went to see me after, and they're like, "Oh God, you're so natural," and I'm like, "Okay, you haven't seen the 40 recording that I've done practicing on the weekend."
Yeah, fair enough.
People don't see that.
People don't see that,
and I think it's so easy to see the end result sometimes.
Yes,
and people don't talk enough about the hard work that goes behind 100%. It, and the prep and the training.
They see the glory, they don't see the grit that has led to that glory. No, it's very interesting. I mean, public speaking is something I'm very passionate about, and I do it for a living. It's my profession, and I've been on stage in front of an audience, now easily over some 500 times, and spoken to many, many, many audiences, and I get a lot of energy from a live audience, and that's where I thrive. Having said that, though, every single time I step on stage, I am nervous. And, when so I have a program called How to Own the Stage is what I teach individuals. And I tell them, you will be nervous. It's about how you handle the nerves. It's not about, we're not here to remove nerves. We're not here to remove stage fright. We're just here to make it not cripple you. We're here to help you address it.
Very good point.
Yeah. So, and I tell my daughter, she's 7, and she's like, "Oh, I don't like public speaking and things like that. How do you do it?" And I said, "Look, I'm nervous. In fact, the last time, a couple of weeks ago, I spoke somewhere, and I came back home and I told her and my wife that my mouth was incredibly dry throughout the whole talk. I was like, I need a gallon of water, and it was nerves because it was at the MCG, the Melbourne Cricket Ground. And even though the talk went really well, throughout it, I was super dry. And I was like, it's still there. After all these years, you're going to have nerves. You just got to learn to sort of manage them. And so it's... What is
that book? Do it, feel the fear and do it anyway.
And do it anyway. Yeah, so that's what we tell her as well. And, she's scared of certain things. And we're like, do it anyway. So, feel afraid, feel scared.
It's true. It's not a sign that you shouldn't do it, right? I think it's also probably the message here is that if you're scared of something or you're afraid, doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. It's just more than try to learn how to handle it. And I think what you've said is completely true. You don't teach, otherwise it's a false sell. Oh, we're going to teach you to not be scared on stage. I still get, it's not going to happen, but maybe it shouldn't happen, because I think the fact that you're still stressed also keep you on your toes, make you practice more, make you
practice
rehearse
make you prepare more. Yes, I mean, when I did a TEDx talk last year, and so finally it was my one of my lifetime ambitions to do a TEDx talk and be a TEDx speaker. And I kid you not, I practiced my talk a little under 100 times, and before I went on. And a lot of people said it was so good, you didn't have a script. I never use a script. I don't use notes or anything like that. I want to keep eye contact with the audience. So even when I sing, I don't use lyrics. And that's preparation. You just don't rock up remembering everything. You've got to do the memory part first.
Yes.
And then you got to
Yes.
express yourself. So anyway, lots of things on public speaking, which I love, and we'll discuss that offline. But you mentioned an
But I
important
appreciate also what you've said. I just want to say, I do appreciate also you being vulnerable and sharing that it is not easy.
Yes, it's not easy.
But it does not equal you being incredibly good at what you do.
Yes.
It's no, people make that link that it's not the case. There's, you can be incredibly good at what you do, very successful. And everybody has that. It's just people don't tend to share it. Everybody has the struggle, but they just
100%.
Yeah, they don't share it.
100%. There was a big moment in my spiritual journey, and it's slight digress, but I'll share it. And this is critical, and it's one of my 7 pillars of peak performance, is that my guru sat in a room addressing everyone, my mentor, and he was talking, but it felt like he was talking to me. And he said, the world will say you are incomplete, but in essence, spirituality says you are complete. And it was the first time I heard anyone say that to me, even though it was not direct, but I think he did look at me. So, and I felt, wow, those words, they felt like, rain in a desert, So I was like, wow, I am complete. And I began a great journey into discovering and connecting with this sense of completeness. And it made me way more comfortable in my own skin. So am I okay to fail in public? I have failed in public. It will not prevent me from getting back on stage. It does not diminish who I am. For that moment, maybe I failed, but that's okay. I'm still complete. So it's that relationship with myself and that being comfortable in my own skin that really helped me. So anyway, but slight digress. You mentioned a word. We talked about fear and being scared.
No, I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very
much.
No,
I love what you've said, because I think it's also then changing the definition of what is failure.
What is failure?
You could think you went on stage, it didn't go as well as you wanted. You could see, oh, that's a failure, I'm not going to do it again. I'm like, or you could see it as, if you haven't failed, it means that you haven't tried hard enough. Yes. I was listening to, I think it was on one of the podcasts from, I think The Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett. And I can't remember who he was talking to, but they were talking about exactly that, the importance of failing. And they were giving some great examples on companies and big companies. And I don't want to give the name of the wrong companies, maybe it was Google, some big companies that they actually look at all their projects. And if they don't have enough failure that year, that it was a problem.
Yes.
Because if their project have not failed enough, is that they were not trying hard enough.
Wow.
And I thought, what an empowering way to see that. And I thought, okay, how can I bring that to my team and say, if you have not failed, it's because you haven't tried hard enough. I thought that was absolutely fantastic switch, right?
Ooh.
Right?
That is
empowering.
That is moving the earth under the feet kind of stuff. If you haven't failed, it means you haven't tried hard enough. Because there's so many important ways. And you talk about it, right? You come from a standpoint that it is important to fail. Because you fail, that means you worked hard enough. And that means you've learned something. And there's also another standpoint that people say, failure teaches you something. So if failure teaches you something, then is it failure at all? So it's
yes, exactly. 100%. Recently, I thought also, when was the last time you put yourself in a position of failure?
Yesterday.
Right? No, but I think if we all ask ourselves that, if you can't remember when, it's probably because it's been too long.
Yeah.
And I tried to do that. And when I was, again, preparing for that little public speaking thing that I did 2 days ago, it was basically telling a story.
Yeah.
And every time I felt on the way there in the taxi, I felt like, Sabrina, why? It is your choice. You put yourself in that position. Yeah, I'm the only one to blame for this, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, Sabrina, but this is why you did it, to feel that being so uncomfortable, wanting to back out, but pushing through that is where the success is.
Yes,
Turning up is where the success is.
Turning up is where.
But I had to tell myself, right?
Yeah.
So I tend to say to people, when did you try something new? When was the last time that you put yourself up for failure?
Yeah.
I quite like that.
Yeah, love it. Oh my God, this is so good. I'm enjoying this so much. Okay, great stuff. Okay, so importance of failure. You also talk about this concept of wheel of life, and I think you take quite a philosophical approach to leadership. Tell us a bit more about that.
I love that. So I think I really want to give credit where it's due. I think the Wheel of Life, I think it was something that Tony Robbins brought up initially. And it's really, and that's something I found in his teachings, and I've done a lot of his courses, and I really like him. But also in some, I really like it. Something also that I find in the concept of the medicine wheel, in more spiritual courses. And it's the idea that you always need to see everything as a 360, and that balance is absolutely key in life. And realizing that concretely, if you spend more time somewhere, you're going to spend less time somewhere else, right? That's the concrete thing. But so I tend to do a wheel of life that I review every few months, and also do a wheel of work. So concretely, basically, imagine if you have something that looks like a pizza, and each slice represent a different aspect of your life. Right? So you have, you're going to have your physical health, your maybe mental health, your relationship with your spouse or partner. You're going to have, maybe your relationship with your friends. You're going to have your work life, maybe finances, your physical environment. And I think the only way that you can really find deep happiness and balance is for all of those to be as balanced as possible. And I find it's so easy to forget some of them. A lot of people are incredibly successful in business, but then that has a detriment to maybe their family life, or that's either detriment to their health, right? Or maybe to their hobby. One of the categories is hobby and fun, as you said earlier on. It's such a big part of life. I mean, what is life if we don't have a laugh and you don't feel joy?
100%.
And then, so you basically, the idea is to, without, getting too much into it, but the idea is to look at all these parts and think, where am I right now? In that category, where am I? The physical health, like, what would be my mark out of 10? Okay. Maybe at the moment I'm 6 out of 10. Okay. But really compared to me, not everybody else, where I am right now compared to where I want to be. So it's, where are you right now? What would 10 out of 10 look like? And then how do you bridge that gap? And I think it gives you a very, a 360 view on your entire life. And then I thought that was so helpful. So I try to review that. And, I'm like, okay, well, hobby, I haven't spent enough time on my hobby. So I'm going to start painting again, or I'm going to, do artistic things. And then I thought it was so helpful that I would do that also in my work. My work life. So I would have, okay, what does the 360 of me as a professional look like? Maybe one part is me as a manager. One part is me as a employee of, the company, reporting to my CEO. One part is my, negotiation or pitching, public speaking. And actually, if you see it like that, it helps you to be more rounded and to make sure you don't forget any important part of life or work.
Very interesting.
I don't know. I hope that was helpful.
Very interesting. And so that it makes the whole pizza very, very sumptuous and tasty. I like that. Each slice has to work. Very nice. I love it.
Yeah. And then if you think as a wheel, if one of the slides is at 1 or 2, then it's not going to roll really well, right? So it's important that all of them to be as equal as possible.
Nice. Very nice. Very nice. Equal amount of toppings.
Yes.
Good.
Exactly.
Good. All right. Fantastic. So, look, I'm loving this discussion with you, and hopefully we'll have a little bit offline as well. But in terms of the podcast, we try to obviously, keep it to about that 30-40 minute mark, which brings us to, with some sadness, I must say, it brings us to the last question of the podcast, which always remains the same. And we've talked about so many concepts that have made you as successful. Not just successful, it's the outcome, but just changed you, transformed you as a person as you continue on that growth journey. So thank you for sharing all that. But the real question that we try to address on this podcast is, according to you, Sabrina, what is the one must-have or one non-negotiable for someone to become the next big thing?
Oh, it's such a big one, isn't it? The first thing I'm going to say what really comes straight away is passion. I I don't think you can have any success without passion. Because passion it's what will push you through the challenging time, because there will be. Regardless of the industry that you want to be the next big thing in, you will have challenges. And I feel your passion is what will make it. Whatever it takes, I'll get there. Whatever failure, whatever, my passion will carry me through everything. And I think it's contagious to be passionate. And I actually I always think of that when I hire people. I'm like, you can't teach people skills.
Yes.
You can't teach passion and motivation.
Yeah.
So I would say passion. And I know it's people who said, okay, how do I get passionate? Well, I suppose it's, finding your why, finding why you actually want to do that. And maybe that's where the passion comes from.
Yes. Starting with the why, as the wonderful Simon Sinek says. And okay, wonderful. All right, passion it is. And I am super passionate about, this podcast. So thank you for making this podcast so much more special. This was a wonderful episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, we thank you for your time and for all your wisdom. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you so much, Shriram. It was lovely to be here with you. I really enjoyed the chat too. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much.